The first thing anyone noticed was that she didn't blink, not when the sun burned the fields into a pale shimmer, not when dust blew hard enough to sting tears from grown men's eyes, not even at night, when owls cried and the dark pressed close like a living thing. Her eyes stayed open, watching, quiet and pale as river stones pulled from the bottom of a stream. But wait for a second before we continue towards the video. Let us know in the comments which country you're watching from and what time of day it is for you. And don't forget to subscribe. The plantation lay in western Kentucky, where the land rolled soft and green, and the soil held a damp memory even in summer. Tobacco fields stretched outward like rows of stitched scars, and the big house sat on a low rise, white-pillared and watching everything below it. People said the land was gentle there. People lied. She appeared one spring morning with no announcement. No one remembered seeing her come down the road. No wagon had brought her. No trader had signed a ledger. She was simply there, standing near the quarters, barefoot, thin as a reed, her dress a rough sackcloth too large for her narrow shoulders. Someone asked her name. She did not answer. Someone else asked louder, sharp with irritation. Still nothing. At first they thought her mute. That was easier. A missing voice could be forgiven. Missing fear could not. She was young, no more than 10 or 11, but her eyes were wrong. Not the dark brown common among the others, not black, not hazel. They were pale, not white, not blue, something in between, like fog over water, like milk spilled into ash. The older slaves noticed before anyone else did. Old Eli, who had seen 3 masters and buried 2 wives, crossed himself when he passed her. Aunt Merrow would not sleep if the girl was within sight of the doorway. Children stopped laughing when she walked near. Even the dogs slunk away, tails low, whining softly as if scolded by something unseen. By the 3rd day, whispers began. She watches when you sleep. She sees things that ain't happened yet. She ain't born right. She ain't born at all. The overseer, a thick-necked man named Cobb, laughed when he heard it. Fear irritated him. Fear disrupted order. He grabbed the girl by the arm and dragged her into the yard, demanding she speak. Name, he said, shaking her once. Her body moved with the pull, but her eyes never left his face. They didn't widen. They didn't flinch. They simply held him, steady and unblinking. Cobb released her as if burned. He said nothing more, spat into the dirt, and walked away. That night the horses screamed. It was a sound no one forgot. Not a neigh, not a kick of panic. A scream, high and wet and desperate. Lanterns were lit. Men ran to the stables. They found the largest bay mare collapsed in her stall, eyes rolled back, foam at her mouth, legs thrashing as if fighting something no one else could see. By morning the mare was dead. The master said it was colic. Horses died of that all the time. Still, he ordered the girl kept out of sight. She was given work in the far shed, cleaning tools, carrying water, anything that kept her away from the house. Yet wherever she went, things shifted. Chickens stopped laying. Milk soured too fast. A field hand slipped on dry ground and broke his wrist. A child woke screaming from dreams of eyes in the dark. And always the girl watched. She did not cry. She did not laugh. She did not speak. When struck, once, twice, she did not beg. She simply looked at the one who struck her, head tilted slightly, eyes wide and pale, unblinking. It was then that someone noticed something else. At night, when lamps were blown out and darkness filled the quarters, her eyes did not disappear. They caught light that was not there, a faint gleam, soft, like moonlight reflected from bone. No one slept near her after that. On the 7th night the clouds covered the moon, and the fields lay black as pitch. Old Eli woke with a feeling of being watched. He sat up, heart pounding, and looked toward the doorway. There she was, standing just outside the threshold, not moving, not breathing hard, just standing, eyes open, pale and glowing faintly in the dark. Eli would later swear she never stepped forward, but the fear did. Morning came slow after the night her eyes were seen in the dark. The sun rose as it always did, burning away mist from the low fields, gilding the roof of the big house and warming the packed dirt between the quarters. Work resumed. Orders were shouted. Buckets were lifted. Hoes struck soil. On the surface the plantation breathed as it always had. Beneath it something held its breath. No one spoke of what old Eli had seen, not openly. Fear, when named, became real. And real things demanded answers no one wanted to give. But the girl was watched more closely than ever, watched from corners of eyes, watched through door slats, watched by those who pretended not to see her at all. She was moved from shed to shed, always farther from the center, always closer to the trees. It was there, at the edge of the woods, that the oldest among them began to murmur the things they had buried long ago. Aunt Merrow was the first to speak her mind. She was bent with age, skin folded into itself like dried bark, eyes cloudy yet sharp when they fixed on something worth remembering. She had delivered more babies than anyone could count, both black and white, slave and free. When she said a thing was wrong, people listened. "She ain't got no name," Merrow whispered one evening, her voice low as the cicadas, "and that ain't because nobody gave her one." A younger woman scoffed nervously. "Maybe she forgot." Merrow shook her head slowly. A child don't forget a name. A child's born with it in her mouth even if she don't speak it yet. That night Marrow told the story she had sworn never to tell. It was years ago, before Cobb, before this master, before the new barn was built. A storm had rolled in from nowhere, violent and sudden, rain like fists, thunder that cracked the ground open. A woman had been brought to Marrow's cabin just before midnight, doubled over in labor. The woman had no face anyone recognized. She was black as any of us, Marrow said, but she didn't belong to nobody. No marks, no chains, no fear. The birth was wrong from the start. The child came too easily, no screaming, no blood. When Marrow lifted the baby, the eyes were already open, watching. Marrow had dropped the child. By the time she recovered, the woman was gone. No tracks, no sound. Just the baby, quiet and alert, eyes pale as fog. Marrow wrapped the child and took her to the master, who ordered the baby recorded as found property. No mother listed, no name given. The ledger entry was thin and hurried, like something written by a man who wanted it forgotten. Born without a name, Marrow whispered. Born without a past. The girl, now older, taller, still silent, sat nearby, picking at a splintered piece of wood. She did not look at Marrow. But when the story reached its end, her hands stilled. Something flickered behind her eyes. The whispers spread. Some said she was a changeling. Some said she was a punishment sent by God for sins too deep to wash away. Some said she wasn't a girl at all, but a door. Cobb did not like doors. He dragged her out again 2 days later. Fed up with the way people paused when she passed, the way even he felt watched when she stood too close. He demanded she speak. When she didn't, he struck her. Once, twice. The third blow never landed. His arm locked mid-swing, muscles rigid, face flushing red with effort. He grunted, cursed, tried to force it down. The girl looked at him, not angry, not afraid, just curious. Cobb's arm dropped. He staggered back, pale now, sweating through his shirt. The onlookers said later that it was like watching a man wake from a nightmare while standing upright. That night, Cobb dreamed of eyes. He woke screaming, clutching his chest, heart racing as if chased. By morning he was fevered. By evening he was delirious, babbling about shadows that leaned in close and whispered his name, though no one had ever told the girl what that name was. 3 days later, Cobb was dead. The master said it was illness, bad blood. The land was damp. Men died all the time. No one believed him. They stopped calling her girl after that. They called her Witch Eyes. The name slid through the quarters like smoke, curling into every corner. Children learned it before they learned prayers. Grown men said it only in murmurs, as if speaking louder might draw her gaze, and she was changing. At night she no longer slept like the others. She sat awake, knees drawn to her chest, eyes open, watching the dark. Sometimes her lips moved, shaping words without sound. Sometimes she pressed her palm to the dirt floor, fingers splayed, as if listening to something beneath it. She began to understand fear, not as something done to her, but as something she could touch. The first time she realized this, it was an accident. A boy, no more than 6, tripped near her and fell, skinning his knee. He looked up, startled, and met her eyes. His breath caught. He froze, staring, fear flooding him so fast it made him dizzy. The girl felt it, a warmth behind her eyes, a tightening in her chest. The boy screamed, not from pain but terror, and scrambled away, sobbing, clutching his head as if something had reached inside it. The girl recoiled, shocked by her own reaction. That night she cried for the first time. No sound came out, but tears slid down her cheeks, hot and real, and dripped into the dirt. The land drank them. In the big house, the master read his Bible with shaking hands. He lingered on passages about witches, about false prophets, about eyes that led men astray. His wife refused to look out the window after sunset. They discussed what to do with witch eyes in low voices, behind closed doors. Fire was mentioned, chains were mentioned, God was mentioned. None of it eased the feeling that the house itself was listening. In the quarters, Marrow approached the girl cautiously, kneeling beside her. "You hear me, child," she said softly. "You hear me fine." The girl did not turn. "You ain't evil," Marrow continued, "but you ain't just flesh neither, and if you don't learn what them eyes do, somebody gonna try and end you." The girl finally looked at her. For the first time, Marrow did not flinch. "What am I?" the girl whispered. It was the first word anyone had ever heard her speak. The wind moved through the trees then, low and heavy, as if answering. The wind did not answer her question with words. It answered by moving through the trees in a way that made the branches lean closer, their leaves whispering against one another like mouths sharing a secret. The girl felt it before she understood it, a pressure behind her eyes, a hum under her skin, as if something ancient had stirred and recognized its own. Marrow watched her carefully. "You hear that?" the old woman asked. The girl nodded. "What'd it say?" "I don't know," she whispered, "but it knows me." Marrow's breath caught. She reached out, then thought better of it, drawing her hand back to her chest. "Listen to me now," she said, voice firm despite the tremor in it. "Some gifts ain't gifts, they're burdens, and burdens need rules." "What rules?" the girl asked. Merrow shook her head slowly. I don't know yet, but you best learn 'em quick. They did not have long. Cobb's death left a hole in the plantation's order, and holes invited cruelty to crawl through. The man sent to replace him arrived from the east within the week, a younger overseer named Harlan Price, with sharp eyes and a mouth that curled upward when he smiled, as if the world amused him and disappointed him at the same time. Price noticed Witch Eye's eye. Immediately, not with fear, with interest. He watched her the way gamblers watch dice roll, calculating, waiting for something to turn in his favor. The others felt it and drew away, but Price made a point of calling her close, assigning her tasks near the center of the yard, forcing her into view. Look at her, he said one afternoon, loud enough for everyone to hear. Y'all been scaring yourselves with a child. He stepped into her space close enough that she could smell tobacco on his breath. Ain't that right? She did not answer. Price's smile sharpened. Speak. Her eyes lifted to his. The hum surged. She broke eye contact instantly, heart pounding, breath shallow. She remembered the boy screaming. She remembered the warmth that followed fear. Price laughed. See, just a girl. That night he ordered her whipped, not for disobedience, not for theft, just to prove a point. The yard filled quickly. People were drawn to punishment the way moths were drawn to flame, horrified yet unable to look away. The post stood bare beneath the fading sun, its wood dark with old stains. The girl was tied, wrists above her head, feet barely touching the dirt. Merrow pushed forward. She ain't done nothing, she said. Price turned. That's so. He tilted his head. Then she won't mind, will she? The first lash split skin. The girl gasped, not from pain but shock. The second drew blood. The third brought a sound from her throat, thin and broken. The crowd shifted uneasily. Price watched her face. Look at me, he said. She didn't want to. He grabbed her chin and forced her head up. Their eyes met. Everything stopped. The hum roared, no longer contained. Fear poured off Price in waves, sudden, overwhelming, raw. The girl felt it slam into her, filling her chest, flooding her limbs. It was too much. It was everything. Something inside her snapped into place. Price screamed, not a shout, not a cry. A scream pulled from somewhere deep where reason couldn't reach. He staggered back, clutching his face, nails scraping his own skin as if trying to tear something away. Get it out, he howled. Get it out of my head. The whip fell uselessly to the ground. The girl felt the fear twist, coil, and then, without meaning to, tighten. Price collapsed, body convulsing, eyes wide and glassy. He babbled, words tumbling over one another. They're watching. So many eyes. Can't close 'em, can't. He passed out before nightfall. They untied her in silence. No one spoke as they carried Price away. By morning he was alive. By evening he was ruined. He could not stand the dark. He could not stand light either. He flinched at shadows. He screamed when someone blinked too close to him. He refused to sleep, claiming that when he closed his eyes, hers were still there. The master ordered him sent away. Quietly. Without record, the punishment ended, but the name spread. Witch Eyes. It was no longer a whisper. It was a warning. Children were told not to look at her. Men crossed themselves. Women muttered prayers under their breath. Some begged her forgiveness for things she had never accused them of. The girl retreated inward. She did not want the warmth anymore, did not want the power that bloomed when fear touched her. She tried to avoid eyes, tried to keep her gaze low, tried to be smaller. But fear finds what it fears. One evening, as the sun bled red across the fields, she felt it again, sharp and focused. Someone behind her, heart racing, breath shallow. She turned. A man stood there, a field hand named Isaac, shaking, eyes darting. I ain't gonna hurt you, he said quickly. I just want it to stop. What? She asked. The dreams, he whispered. Since Price, since that night, I see what he saw, eyes everywhere, watching, judging. She backed away. I didn't mean to. He stepped forward. Make it stop. His fear surged. The hum answered. She clamped down, eyes squeezing shut, nails digging into her palm. The warmth pressed against her ribs, begging release. Please, Isaac sobbed. She opened her eyes. The fear twisted, not sharpened, not deepened, but changed. It folded inward, collapsing on itself like a snuffed flame. Isaac gasped, swayed, then slumped to the ground, breathing steady and slow, sleeping. She stared at him, stunned. She hadn't hurt him. She hadn't fed on his fear. She had shaped it. That night she told Merrow everything. The old woman listened without interrupting, her face grave. When the girl finished, Merrow nodded once. There it is, she said. First rule. What rule? The girl asked. Fear ain't just poison, Merrow said. It's a tool, and tools cut both ways. The girl wrapped her arms around herself. What am I going to become? Merrow looked toward the woods. Depends on what you choose to be. They did not see the master's wife watching from the porch. They did not hear the decision being made upstairs, whispered between prayers and candlelight. By dawn a plan had formed, chains, fire, God, and a belief, dangerous and absolute, that Witch Eyes could be destroyed before she learned what else she could do. The girl slept lightly that night, dreams restless, the hum pulsing faint beneath her thoughts. She woke with the certainty that something was coming. She woke before the rooster cried, not from sound but from pressure, like a thumb pressed gently but firmly between her eyes. The hum was there, low and steady, not the wild surge it became when fear touched her, but a constant presence now, like breath. She lay still on the pallet, listening to the quarters breathe around her, the soft rasp of sleep, the creak of settling wood, the distant murmur of insects. Somewhere beyond the trees a dog barked once and fell silent. Something was wrong. She sat up slowly. The darkness did not swallow her eyes anymore. It bent around them. She could see shapes where there should have been none, the faint outline of Merrow's kettle, the shallow dip in the dirt where Isaac had slept the night before. The world had not grown brighter, she had grown sharper. A thought brushed her mind, not in words but in weight. They are awake. She stood and slipped outside. The air was cool, damp with the memory of rain. Mist clung to the ground, crawling like a living thing between the cabins and toward the yard. As she crossed it, she felt the soil under her feet answer her steps, subtle, almost polite. The land knew her now. From the big house a candle guttered and went out. The day unfolded with a tightness that never eased. Work was assigned quickly. No one lingered near her. Conversations died when she approached. Even Merrow kept her distance, eyes flicking often toward the porch, where the master's wife stood watching the fields with hands clasped tight enough to whiten her knuckles. By midday the first attempt came. It was quiet, careful, almost kind. 2 men approached her near the well, faces schooled into calm. "Master wants you inside," one said, "just for a word." She felt the lie before it reached her ears. It pressed against her ribs, sour and insistent. Fear threaded through it, not theirs but someone else's, braided into the command. She shook her head. The men exchanged a glance. One reached for her arm. She looked up, not at the men, at the space behind them. Fear flared, sharp, sudden, and the hum rose to meet it. The men froze, breaths hitching, eyes darting wildly as if something unseen had stepped too close. "Don't," she said softly. They stumbled back, tripping over each other in their haste to get away. The master's wife watched from the porch, lips thinning. By evening the whispers returned, thicker now, edged with purpose. "She's learning. She sees through lies. She ain't just watching anymore." That night they tried chains. They came while she slept. 3 men and the preacher, lantern light bobbing like will-o-wisps. Merrow shouted a warning boo. T-hands clamped over her mouth. The men moved fast, practiced. Iron bit into the girl's wrists, cold and heavy, pinning her arms to her sides. She woke with a gasp, heart racing, the hum spiking sharp and wild. "Hold her!" someone hissed. Fear flooded the room, raw, panicked, overwhelming. It poured into her too much, too fast. The warmth burned, her vision swam. She cried out, not in pain but in confusion. The preacher began to pray. She squeezed her eyes shut. The chains rattled, not from struggle. From resistance, the iron grew warm, then hot. Men swore and dropped the links, skin blistering. The chains fell to the dirt with a dull clang, blackened and smoking. Silence crashed down. The girl opened her eyes. The men stared at her like she had risen from the grave. She did not understand what she had done, only that something in her had pushed back, harder than before. The land beneath the cabin groaned softly, a sound like settling earth after a long rain. They fled. By dawn the story had already changed in the telling. Chains that burned, prayers that failed. A girl who could not be held. The master's wife did not sleep. She paced until her feet ached, then knelt until her knees bled. In the gray light of morning she sent for the preacher again. "Fire," she said. "Fire cleans." The preacher hesitated. She's a thing," the wife snapped, "and it watches us." Preparations began quietly. A pyre built near the old oak, where the soil was bare and the branches twisted like arthritic fingers. The choice of place was no accident. The oak was old, older than the house, older than the first fences. It had seen blood before. The girl felt the intent before the wood was stacked. It pressed into her thoughts, heavy and final. She staggered, clutching at her head, breath coming fast. The hum deepened, no longer just within her, but around her, through the roots, through the stones, through the dark spaces between breaths. She ran. Not far. Only to the tree line, where the woods began to close in. She pressed her palm to the nearest trunk, chest heaving. Help me, she thought, not to anyone she knew. The woods answered, not with voices, with attention. Leaves stilled. Birds fell silent. The air thickened, warm and close. She felt eyes on her, not human, not cruel, old, patient. Merrow found her there, tears streaking down her face. "They mean to burn you," she whispered. "I tried to stop 'em." The girl nodded. She already knew. "I don't want to hurt anyone," she said, "but I don't know how to stop it." Merrow cupped her face, trembling but resolute. "Then listen to me now. You don't fight fear head on. You turn it back." "How?" "By letting it see itself." Footsteps crunched behind them. Voices. Lantern light. The men closed in, ropes ready, faces pale and set. The preacher raised his Bible. The girl stepped forward. She did not look at their eyes. She looked at their fear. She let it fill her. But she did not tighten. She did not feed. She reflected. The effect was immediate. Men staggered, dropping ropes, clutching their heads. The preacher fell to his knees, weeping, begging forgiveness from a God he could no longer feel watching him. Visions poured into them, not of her eyes, but of their own deeds, their own hidden terrors, their own smallness laid bare. They fled screaming into the night. The pyre stood unfinished. The master's wife watched from the porch, face white, hands shaking. When the girl's gaze lifted toward her, the woman recoiled as if struck. "Monster," she whispered. The girl felt it then, something cold, sharp, and focused beneath the fear, hatred, purpose. She turned away. By morning, the plantation was no longer just afraid. It was at war with her. And she understood, finally, that fear was not the most dangerous thing she carried. It was the way people would do anything, to destroy what made them feel small. The plantation did not sleep after the FAI. Lead burning, it lay awake, tense and listening, like an animal that had felt the knife and now waited for the next strike. Lanterns burned all night in the big house. Men paced. Women whispered prayers into clenched fists. The air itself felt bruised, heavy with things unsaid and decisions half made. By morning, fear had hardened into resolve. The master returned from town before noon, his coat dusted, his mouth set in a line that allowed no argument. He had listened to the stories, chains that burned, men undone by their own thoughts, fire that never touched flesh. And he had chosen a different path. If witch eyes could not be punished like a slave, she would be contained like a curse. They came for her at dusk, not with shouting, not with prayer, with silence. Marrow sensed it first. The girl was sitting near the edge of the woods, knees drawn to her chest, tracing shapes in the dirt with one finger. The land hummed beneath her touch, steady and low, like a heartbeat. She looked calm, too calm. "They're coming," Marrow said. "I know," the girl replied. Men emerged from the shadows, 6 of them this time, heavy boots, thick gloves, iron collars looped with leather padded on the inside. A wagon waited behind them, its bed lined with straw and chains bolted deep into the wood. The master stood apart, watching. "We won't hurt you," he said, lying carefully. "Just keep you somewhere safe, for everyone." The girl rose slowly. She felt the fear, layered now, controlled, forced down by discipline and drink. It was harder to grasp, like smoke trapped in a bottle. But beneath it was something sharper, determination. She looked at Marrow. "Don't fight," Marrow whispered back. "Not yet." The men moved quickly. The collar snapped shut around her neck with a dull metallic click. For a moment nothing happened. Relief flickered across a few faces, then the hum surged. Not violently, not wildly, it spread. The girl's breath came fast, but she did not struggle. The collar heated just enough to make the men curse and adjust their grip. They dragged her to the wagon, chains clanking, iron biting into iron. The moment they bolted her down, the land groaned. It was subtle, easily mistaken for settling wood or distant thunder, but Marrow felt it in her bones. The soil beneath the wagon darkened, damp seeping up as if something deep below had stirred. "Go!" the master snapped. The wagon lurched forward. They took her to the old storage pit. It lay beyond the far fields, half forgotten, carved into a low rise where the earth was dense and stubborn. It had once held grain, later bodies. Now was empty, lined with stone and sunk deep enough that sunlight barely reached the bottom. They lowered her down on ropes. She did not scream. As her feet touched the cold stone floor, the hum changed. It grew thicker, slower, resonating through the walls. The pit felt aware. Chains were secured. The collar tightened. A heavy grate was pulled across the opening. Darkness swallowed her. Above, the master wiped sweat from his brow. "That's done," he said. No one answered. Down below, the girl stood in the dark, heart racing. The collar pressed against her throat, limiting her breath. The chains anchored her limbs. Panic clawed at her chest, and with it came fear, wild and unfiltered. Her own. The hum answered. It did not feed on her fear. It spoke to it. Images rose unbidden, roots threading through soil, stone remembering hands long gone, blood soaking into earth and never truly leaving. She saw women running through forests older than names. She saw eyes like hers reflected in black water. She felt a lineage stretching backward, not through blood alone, but through place. She pressed her palm to the stone. The pit answered. Not by breaking, not by opening, by listening. Above ground, the night deepened. Crickets sang. The plantation waited. Then the screaming started. It came from the pit, not the girl's voice, but so. Mething layered through it, a sound like many breaths exhaled at once. Men stumbled back from the opening, hands flying to ears, faces blanching. The grate rattled, chains strained, not snapping but singing, iron vibrating with a low, terrible resonance. "She's breaking free," someone shouted. "No," Marrow whispered from the shadows. "She's learning." The master barked orders. More men rushed forward, hauling on chains, forcing the grate down. The screaming stopped abruptly, silence slammed into the night. Minutes passed, then the earth shifted. Not violently, gently. Like a sleeper turning in bed, a crack split the ground near the pit's edge. Another followed. Men backed away as the soil slumped inward, stones grinding against one another. The grate warped, bending under pressure from below, not upward but sideways, as if something beneath was reshaping the space itself. The master fell to his knees. "What is she?" he breathed. Marrow did not answer. Inside the pit, the girl sagged against the chains, gasping. The collar burned hot now, pain flaring with every breath. Tears streamed down her face, splashing onto the stone. "I don't want this," she whispered. The hum softened, the images returned, clearer now. She saw the woman who had birthed her, standing barefoot in mud, eyes pale and steady. She felt a hand at her back, guiding, steadying. "You are not made to be held," the presence seemed to say. "You are made to hold," she inhaled, and let go. The fear did not surge outward, it sank. The pit stilled, above ground the soil settled. The cracks closed, leaving only faint scars. The men stared, stunned, hearts hammering. "She's trapped," one said weakly. The master nodded, clinging to the word. But Marrow felt the truth like a cold weight in her chest. Trapped things fought, rooted things waited, days passed, food was lowered, water followed. The girl took it quietly. She did not sleep much. When she did, she dreamed of soil and bone, of eyes opening beneath the earth. People began to avoid the pit. Animals refused to pass near it. At night, lights flickered when no one touched them. Once a man swore he heard whispering, not words but knowing. On the 5th night the master came alone. He knelt by the pit, lantern trembling in his grip. "If you can hear me," he said, voice breaking, "I'll let you go. Just stop." From below, her voice drifted up, soft and steady. "I don't want to hurt you," she said, "but you can't own what was never yours." The lantern went out. By morning the pit was empty. The chains lay twisted and cold, collars split clean in two, as if unmade rather than broken. There were no footprints, no signs of struggle, only the earth, smooth, undisturbed, as though it had closed itself back around a secret. The master fled before sunset. Marrow stood at the pit's edge long after everyone else had gone, tears cutting clean lines down her face. "She ain't gone," she whispered to the soil. "She's just deeper now." In the woods something watched and waited. For 3 days after the pit was found empty, the plantation spoke only in fragments. She vanished. She sank. The earth took her. No one said escaped. Escape implied chains had failed. Escape implied blame. It was easier, safer to believe something older had claimed her back. The master's house stood abandoned by the 4th dawn. Doors open. Drawers pulled out. The Bible left on the desk, its pages warped by damp air. The wife had fled in the night, taking nothing that could not be carried in shaking hands. By the end of the week, wagons from neighboring farms came to collect what they could. The land, they said, had gone bad. Marrow stayed. She slept near the pit, wrapped in her shawl, bones aching, eyes fixed on the place where the girl had last spoken. Each night she pressed her palm to the ground and whispered, not prayers but names of things that remembered longer than people did. On the 7th night, the soil answered. It was not a voice. It was a shift in weight, a gentle insistence. Marrow followed it into the woods, deeper than she had gone in years, past trees marked by lightning scars and roots that bulged like knuckles from the earth. There, beneath a stand of ancient oaks, the ground breathed. The girl rose from it as if waking from deep water. She was not dirty, not wounded. Her dress was intact, though the fabric clung differently now, as if woven with the forest's patience. Her eyes were the same pale fog, but steadier, anchored, no longer searching. Marrow fell to her knees. "I knew you weren't gone," she whispered. The girl looked around, taking in the woods as if seeing them clearly for the first time. "I didn't leave," she said. "I learned how to stay." They sat together until dawn, and the girl told Marrow what the earth had shown her, not memories exactly, layers. She had sunk through the fear and the chains into something vast and slow, where time folded back on itself. The land remembered footsteps long erased, fires long cooled, blood long absorbed. It remembered women who ran, women who hid, women who stood their ground when standing meant death. She saw her mother then, not as a single face, but as many. Women with pale eyes scattered across centuries, bound not by blood alone, but by place. They were watchers, keepers, born where the soil was thick with grief and resilience. They did not rule, they endured. They held what others tried to bury. "They weren't witches," the girl said quietly. "They were anchors." Marrow nodded. "And anchors don't move easy." The girl had a choice, the land told her. She could remain, becoming something rooted and eternal, bound to the soil that claimed her, or she could walk, carrying the land's memory with her, shaping fear where she found it, never fully belonging anywhere again. "What did you choose?" Marrow asked. The girl touched the ground. "Both." By sunrise the woods had changed, not visibly, subtly. Paths seemed clearer, birds returned, the air felt less bruised, word spread quickly, too quickly for coincidence. People came to the edge of the trees, staring, whispering her name without daring to step closer. Witch eyes. She did not correct them. She walked the plantation one last time. The pit lay sealed, smooth as if never disturbed. She placed her palm there, felt the land answer, then turned away. Merrow walked with her to the far fence. "You can't stay," Merrow said, not accusing, just knowing. "No," the girl agreed, "but I'll come back when the land needs me." Merrow pressed something into her hand, a small pouch of soil, dark and rich. "So you remember," she said. The girl smiled, just barely. She stepped beyond the fence and into the road where the world stretched uncertain and wide. With each step the hum followed, not loud, not demanding. Present, behind her the plantation began to empty. Fields reclaimed themselves. Houses sagged, stories blurred. But the soil remained, patient and awake. Years later travelers would swear the woods watched them, that the ground felt warm beneath bare feet, that fear behaved strangely there, revealing itself too clearly to ignore. And sometimes at the edge of vision a girl with pale eyes could be seen standing still, listening to the earth breathe. Fire always came back to the land. It came in different hands, under different names, wrapped in different justifications, but it always came the same way, born from fear that had hardened into certainty. Fear that decided something must be erased to feel safe again. Years had passed since Witch Eyes walked away from the plantation, but the soil remembered her absence as keenly as it remembered her touch. Trees leaned differently now. Roots shifted where they once had not. Streams altered their course by inches, then feet, then yards. The land was quieter, but not asleep. People returned slowly. First came scavengers, stripping what TTLA remained of value. Then squatters, then men with papers and deeds, declaring ownership over ground that had never asked to be owned. They spoke of rebuilding, of profit, of forgetting. They spoke too loudly. The girl, no longer a girl in years but unchanged in face, felt it from miles away. She had walked far since leaving the plantation, through towns that stared too long, through forests that whispered too softly, through places where fear tasted sharp and brittle, and places where it lay thick as mud. She learned restraint, she learned precision, she learned how to turn fear inward until it collapsed on itself, leaving nothing but clarity behind. She did not linger. Wherever she stayed too long, people began to notice the way lies unraveled around her, how cruelty lost its footing, how those who carried secrets felt suddenly exposed, as if their thoughts had grown too loud to hide. She moved on before they decided what to call her next, but this time the pull was stronger. The land called her home. She returned under cover of dusk, stepping onto the old road like a memory walking itself back into place. The fence was gone now. The fields lay choked with weeds. The big house was little more than a skeleton, beams blackened by time and rot. At the edge of the woods she stopped. The hum deepened, not in warning but recognition. The soil welcomed her the way lungs welcomed air long denied. She knelt, pressing both palms to the ground. "I'm here," she thought. The land answered. That night the fire was lit. They had planned it carefully. Men from nearby towns had gathered, emboldened by drink and scripture and the certainty that came from numbers. They spoke of curses and devils and unfinished business. They spoke of purifying what had gone wrong. They built their pyres near the trees, too near. Torches flared, casting long jagged shadows that leapt and twisted across the clearing. Someone shouted a prayer. Someone else laughed too loudly. Dry brush caught fast, flames climbing hungrily, snapping and popping as they spread. The woods inhaled. She stood at the tree line, watching, not intervening. Not yet. Fear rippled through the men as the fire grew higher than expected, heat pressing outward in waves. Sparks leapt skyward, vanishing into the dark canopy above. Then the wind shifted. Smoke blew back toward them, thick and choking. Eyes watered. Coughs turned to gasps. Someone stumbled and fell, torch rolling free into the brush. Panic flared. The hum surged, not wild, not violent. Focused, she stepped forward, her silhouette cut clean against the firelight. Pale eyes reflected the flames, making them seem dim by comparison. Conversation died mid-word. Men froze, caught between fight and flight, fear spiking sharp and sudden. "It's her," someone whispered. Witch Eyes. She felt their fear pour into her. Hot, desperate, tangled with belief. They knew what she was now, or thought they did. That certainty made the fear stronger. She did not tighten it. She opened. The fire changed, not extinguished, not contained, revealed. Flames bent low, crawling along the ground instead of leaping high. Heat pressed inward, forcing the men back toward the center of their own circle. Smoke thinned in places, thickened in others, drawing lines no one had marked. Men saw things then, not visions imposed, but reflections drawn from themselves. One saw the boy he had beaten years ago, now grown, eyes hollow. Another saw his own hands closing around a woman's throat, remembered strength turning suddenly weak. A third dropped to his knees, sobbing, as the fire showed him every lie he had ever wrapped in righteousness. They screamed, not at her but at what rose inside them. She walked through the flames untouched, heat curling away from her skin as if unwilling to claim her. The fire recognized her now, not as fuel but as boundary. "Go," she said. It was not loud. It did not need to be. Men fled into tea. Dark, dropping torches, tearing at their own clothes. Faces contorted with horror and shame. Some ran until their lungs burned, some collapsed and wept. None looked back. The fire guttered, confused, then settled into embers. By dawn, nothing remained but ash and scorched earth, and a truth no one could deny. Fire could not burn what the land itself protected. News traveled fast after that, too fast. Stories grew teeth as they spread. A woman who walked through fire. A witch who bent flames to her will. A demon wearing a girl's face. Ministers thundered from pulpits. Town councils met in secret. Men sharpened weapons they did not understand would be useless. They came in daylight this time. A mob larger than before, armed not just with torches but rifles and rope. They advanced cautiously, scanning the woods, fear heavy but disciplined. They believed distance and force would save them. They were wrong. She met them halfway, not alone. The woods moved with her. Branches creaked and shifted, blocking paths that had existed moments before. Roots rose just enough to trip, to slow, to disorient. The air grew thick, pressing in close, carrying the scent of damp soil and old rain. She raised one hand. The mob halted as if pulled by invisible strings. Fear surged, but this time she did not take it in. She sent it back, not magnified, not sharpened, clarified. Each man felt his own fear laid bare, no longer masked by others, no longer justified by numbers. They felt the smallness beneath their rage, the uncertainty beneath their certainty. Weapons fell. A man at the front dropped to his knees, shaking. "What are you?" he whispered. She considered the question. "I am what happens," she said slowly, "when fear goes unanswered too long." The land hummed in agreement. Some fled, some stayed, frozen in place, minds unraveling as they confronted truths they had spent lifetimes avoiding. She did not chase them. She did not punish them. She let them leave carrying themselves. By evening the road was empty. Smoke from distant towns rose on the horizon, not from her doing, but from fear turning inward, burning where it had always lived. She returned to the woods, exhaustion finally settling into her bones. The hum softened, reassuring but insistent. The land had taken much tonight. It needed rest. She sank to her knees beneath the oaks, pressing her forehead to the soil. For the first time in years she allowed herself to tremble. "Am I becoming something else?" she wondered. The answer came not as command, but comfort. "You are becoming more of what you have always been." She slept then, not deeply but enough. When she woke, the world felt altered. The land was quieter but not tense. The air held relief instead of dread. Birds returned to burned branches. Green pushed through blackened soil already stubborn and bright. She knew it could not last forever. Fear always found new shapes. But something had shifted. The land had made its choice. So had she. She rose and walked to the edge of the woods, gazing out over the scarred clearing. Ash clung to her feet, but did not stain. Behind her, the oak stood watch. Ahead of her, the road waited. She did not know yet whether she would leave again. Only that wherever she went next, the land would remember. And so would the people. Years passed the way they always had, quietly, unevenly, pretending nothing had changed. But everything had. The land where the plantation once stood was never rebuilt. Deeds were written and rewritten, sold and contested, but no one stayed long. Crops failed in strange patterns. Wells collapsed without warning. Animals refused to graze too close to the tree line. Those who tried to force the land into obedience spoke later of unease, of nights without rest, of the sense that something waited just beyond the reach of sight. So the place became a gap on maps, a blank. Travelers learned to go around it, and stories, true stories, began the way they always do, as warnings. Children were told not to wander near the old woods. Hunters spoke of paths that shifted behind them. Campers woke to the feeling of being studied, not threatened, measured. A few claimed to have seen her, a woman standing perfectly still at the edge of the trees, pale eyes reflecting moonlight, expression neither kind nor cruel, just aware. Some said she never aged. Some said she wasn't alone. The truth was quieter than rumor, heavier than myth. She remained, not always in form, not always in flesh. Sometimes she walked the roads, passing as a woman with an unsettling gaze and a voice that made liars stumble over their own words. Sometimes she stayed rooted beneath the oaks, listening to the deep language of soil and stone. Sometimes she drifted between the two, neither fully present nor absent, carried by the hum that had become her constant companion. She learned the rhythm of fear across generations. It changed shape but not nature. She watched men justify cruelty with new words. She watched violence dress itself in progress. She watched fear grow clever, less loud, more efficient, and she learned to meet it where it lived now, not with fire, with exposure. There were moments she intervened directly. A judge who woke screaming and resigned without explanation. A preacher who lost his congregation after confessing sins he had never intended to name. A mob that dissolved into argument before it ever formed, its members suddenly uncertain why they had gathered at all. They never saw her, they only felt the sudden, unbearable clarity of themselves. But most of the time she simply watched, because the land did not need constant defense. It needed memory. Marrow died in winter. The girl, no, the woman now, felt it the moment it happened, a gentle loosening in the hum, like a knot finally undone. She walked the road back to the woods, bare feet sinking into cold soil, breath fogging the air. Snow dusted the ground lightly, muffling sound, turning the world inward. She found Marrow beneath the oaks, wrapped in her shawl, eyes closed, face peaceful. No fear lingered. She knelt beside her and pressed her forehead to the old woman's. "You did good," she whispered. The land stirred, acknowledging the loss. They buried Marrow there, where roots ran thick and memory was strongest. No marker was placed. None was needed. After that, the watching changed. The woman felt herself thinning, not weakening but spreading. She could feel farther now, through soil and stone and old bones. She sensed other places like this one. Wounded land, burdened land, land thick with unspoken grief. Some had their own watchers, some waited still. She understood then. She was not unique, she was necessary. Time loosened its grip on her. Years slipped past without carving lines into her face. Her body became a choice she made, rather than a thing she carried. Sometimes she wore it, sometimes she let it go. And always, always she watched. One summer evening, long after the last fire had cooled into legend, a group of travelers camped near the edge of the woods. They laughed too loudly, drank too freely, spoke with the careless confidence of people who believed the world had already been tamed. One of them wandered too close to the trees. He felt it before he saw her, the weight of attention, calm and absolute. She stood among the shadows, eyes pale, unblinking, reflecting the starlight. "Hey," he called, forcing a grin. "Didn't mean to trespass." She said nothing. Fear flickered in him, quick and shallow. He swallowed, trying to hold his ground. "What are you?" he asked, half joking. She stepped forward just enough for him to see her clearly. "I am what remains," she said. The fear surged, not violently, not explosively, honestly. He stumbled back, heart pounding, suddenly aware of every lie he had ever told himself. He ran, not screaming, not chased, just desperate to put distance between himself and the truth, standing in the dark. She did not follow. She turned her gaze back to the woods, to the soil, to the slow and endless work of remembering. By morning the camp was gone. The land breathed. Far away, new fears were being born. New fires planned, new justifications rehearsed. She would meet them when they came. Not as a monster, not as a savior, but as a witness the world could not look away from. And in quiet moments, when the night was still and the earth hummed softly beneath her feet, she wondered how long it would take before people learned the oldest lesson of all, that the most terrifying thing was never her eyes, it was what they forced you to see.